Welcome back to Not a Strong Start, a podcast by filmmakers who talk movies, television, and today, actors' feats. I'm your host, Dan's Feet.
I am not your host, just incredible.
I am your other guy, kicking it up a notch.
Yes, we are. But in this episode, we're not actually going to be talking about their physical feat that's on their bodies. We're talking about some of their greatest accomplishment
There goes
roles,
all my
right?
notes.
What
Sorry,
are you going to
Quentin.
start with, the pinky or the second toe?
Well, no, you got to work your way up to the big toe. You got to
There you
work your
go.
way
So
up to the
pinky
big
first.
toe.
It's always that second toe. Don't you notice it's always that second toe that makes or break a foot? It's always like, do they have that iguana toe that's sticking out a little bit?
Yeah.
Is
The
it that
claw.
second one? Yeah, the claw. I mean, maybe it helps them run better. I'm not sure, but there we are. But
Creepy
all
ass
right.
long toes. What are we talking about right now?
I know.
That's
Okay.
that's the
I
nose tickle toe. That's the nose tickle toe.
I
Since you're not going to speak, you will rub my feet.
know.
Big toe is too big. You got to use that second toe.
Bing, 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 bing.
Clean it up a little bit. That's it.
That's
It's
to
there.
test the water with it. Like, yes, okay, it's
Yeah.
warm.
There you go, right? What is it? Our body's temperature gauge. It's it.
Yeah.
Thermometer. There you go. All right. So is there anything you want to preface with this, Jose? Is there anything you want to set up the audience? That way they know exactly what it is that we're digging into.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about great acting performances and underrated actors and all of that, but beyond just the acting, going in and acting what's on the script and things like that, there's sometimes actors that do stuff that's just extraordinary. That's like beyond what the minimum they actually needed to do, beyond just the performing itself. And that's what we wanted to talk. We wanted to touch on those things that maybe our audience doesn't know about that gives you a little tidbit, a little something to have in your trivia arsenal where you can tell people it's like, hey, guess what? In this movie, you didn't know that this person, blah, 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 blah. That's what we're here for.
There you go. Just like Julia Roberts actually served as a prostitute for a little while on studying for her role.
She's method. She's method.
That's a lie. Please don't
Nas
take
made
us
up
down.
fact. No.
It's a Nas
No.
made up fact. All right, there we go. All right. So, who wants to start us off? Who wants to get right into it? So, George, you want to start us off? Go first.
For sure. So recently, the past few years, we had the movie The Lighthouse by Robert
Mhm.
Eggers, starring Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe.
Mm-hmm.
These two guys are the two guys you see through the whole movie. I thought it was interesting to learn that for Pattinson, for him to get really into this role, he would actually, because he was very sickly. If anyone's seen this movie, like the guy looks like he's dying through the whole
Mhm.
thing. On set, he actually forced himself to throw up multiple times, and he was pissing himself also on set. Like during scenes, he's doing this, and just so
I
he can
drive by-
fully get
I
into
drive
that
by those
mentality.
people all the time at work. Every time I drive to downtown LA, I see many of those method actors on the side of the road.
Yeah,
We have a whole town of lighthouses.
right.
It's just a
LA.
lit street at this point.
I don't miss
The whole
that.
street light.
Apparently, it got so bad that Willem Dafoe had to go to Eggers, and it's just like, if you don't stop him from doing this, I am walking off set right now. Because they're confined in that movie the whole
Yes.
time. So just imagine days on end of just vomit and piss every day. I would get sick of that for myself. I'd just be disgusted in my own self. But he just really wanted to dive into the mentality of what this guy was probably feeling and going through.
I would say this: if you can out nuts Defoe, like
Yeah.
that's an achievement in itself. When Defoe is like, "Hey, you're going too crazy here."
Take it down a notch. all
There's
right?
only room for one crazy guy on set.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so my question to that would be, did he actually pay attention to what he was eating? Because you have to have the foresight. If I'm going to be vomiting this out, am I trying to eat Burger King? Am I trying to eat McDonald's?
Right.
Is that where the conversation that we had earlier? Like where he's actually thinking about, is he eating Frosties from Wendy's? Like he has to think about what's coming out,
There's
right?
zero
Or-
nutrition out of that thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And was he wearing like Depends on it, or he's just like just soak, just letting it soak down his leg or something?
Nah, he was
Oh my
using
God.
my mid adult brand, the Why Nots. That's what it was.
So it's not so much a physical incapability. It's more of just like, why get up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn,
Why not?
that's dedication. Just even just from the vomiting itself, like you know, vomited too many times in my life, but when I have, it's never a pleasant experience. Okay, you get that like acid burn afterwards too,
Yeah,
like in your throat. And if he's doing that consistently throughout set, like his throat must have been messed up by the end of it.
seriously. I imagine to some extent craft services must have come into play in this whole situation, having just the right amount of food where there's bananas and certain things to just keep him regular.
Oh
I'm
man.
sure there was some social influencers dying to find out his diet.
It's the Hollywood diet, baby.
Yeah.
He's probably already doing it. I mean, the good thing that movie was, the movie was good. I
Yeah,
liked it. It was amazing acting performances. It was one of those movies that required the acting performances carried the movie, right? It wasn't so much like the storyline or anything like that, even though it had a pretty good storyline, but still very simple. It was the acting. So if that's what he needed, the funny thing about Robert Pattinson is I didn't know he was this level of an actor.
right,
Like when he
right.
when he first came out, I was just like, oh, there's I already forgot his character's name in Harry Potter, but there he is. He just unalived right now. He's in it for like 5 seconds. But when you would see him, and then when you see him in Twilight, it seemed like he was that. So you know how when you'd always see press between him and Kristen, was it Kristen
Kristen
Stewart?
Stewart, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And they look so depressed and stuff, but to me, I always perceived it as in like, oh, that's just them being so emo. They're just playing into the role, like, oh, woe is me, so sorry that you're famous. But now I see it, I'm like, oh man, you really hated that because it kind of goes against that, like what he's trying to do. It seems almost like Colin Farrell's like that, right? Like we have certain actors that go out of their way. They don't want to be perceived as just the attractive one. They want to be seen as a real actor.
And he could admit to that one. There was no one was allowing any neck biting or blood sucking.
No, not after the last incident.
No, that
No,
was all
no.
soul sucking in that one.
It's also exactly. There was one scene that I saw in it where Willem Dafoe, that scene where he doesn't blink for like 2, 3 minutes and he's just acting so intense. I can't even hold my eyes open for like 30 seconds.
Honestly, when Defoe does blink, that's what throws me off. It's just,
You got eyelids? What the?
yeah.
He's got like the cat eyelids, it's like those like glossy film one behind the regular eyes. It's like, oh my God. All right, Jose, hit us up with the second
uh,
one.
all right. I'm gonna start with this one with our favorite of our podcast, Keanu Reeves. You know,
Yeah.
So, we know Keanu Reeves. We saw a lot of the John Wick behind the scenes stuff, so we all like very familiar on, how he learned to fight, he learned the martial arts, he learned all the gunplay and everything so he could do his own stunts. So we already have, that thing from him that we know he's gonna dive completely into a role, regardless of what you think of his acting ability. Well, that's not the first movie that he's put extraordinary work in for a role. While preparing for his role of Shane Falco in The Replacements, so Keanu Reeves actually worked with football coordinators to properly look like a quarterback, which they normally have these coordinators on sets where actors have to, there's athletes or sports stuff to kind of just teach them to look like their role, look like a basketball player, look like a football player, even if they can't play. So that's normal, but he worked with them. And I guess his footwork, his movement in the pocket, his throwing, all of that got so good that while they were filming, they actually filmed it in Baltimore, even though it was supposed to take place somewhere else. They filmed it in Baltimore. It got so good that he impressed members of the Baltimore Ravens, and they extended an invitation for him to try out for the team. That's how good he
Oh man.
looked.
Man,
Which
Or
he
how
had
bad their quarterback situation was at the time. Take your
What was
yeah.
that,
pick.
Flacco at the time, maybe? It was
Yeah.
Flacco.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so they extended it. He had a bunch of like Hollywood projects going on or in the furnace, so he didn't take the invitation. But like, just imagine like you work so hard on just the prep aspect that you look so good that a professional team is like, let's take a look at you. Like, come over here. Not like, hey, you're looking good. It's like you're looking good enough to like come over here. Like, let's go.
That's crazy because at that time, when he already been in his 30s,
About
Okay.
maybe 30.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just to be, I guess, forgiving here, like maybe late 20s. Like that's a late age to be wanting to get someone to go on your team. especially for football, like a sport that
Yeah.
really beats up your body. That's pretty impressive to garner that kind of attention.
It is, but I mean, we saw, you know, how much damage John Wick can take, so I'm sure he would have been able to
Yeah.
handle
We know
himself pretty well.
now. We know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they saw something. They saw the
They
goods.
saw,
They
You
saw...
know what? They
they
saw
saw
Johnny
him.
Utah. Don't remember,
Yeah.
Johnny Utah was a
Yeah.
quarterback. They knew they could tap into that untapped promise potential, man. That's kind of funny though. Yeah, when you think about that, Keanu Reeves has always been one where, you know, when you see him and it seems like his demeanor, it seems like he's so cool and calm, and it seems like he would have like he'd be constantly wearing pairs of why nots. Doesn't it? Like he's always like, meh. But when you see the intensity when he trains, like did you see that video where he was training you know, like sharpshooting and all that? Like you see him like a
Yeah.
military tactical guns. I'm like, oh my God, this
And
guy's
then
like
he
a
brought in Halle
beast.
Berry to train with him too for the other John Wick. For the,
Yeah, man, that's insane. So you see the level of attention that he puts into it, which is all what quarterback play is. So that's crazy. I believe it.
Yeah. And I can see because like you mentioned how cool he is, like he's so calm and collective. That's exactly the guy you want in the pocket. It's someone
Hmm.
who's super chill and just doesn't let anything get to him.
Like Matthew McConaughey would be one too. That seemed like he'd be really chill. All right, all right. All right. So here's one. I picked Daniel Day-Lewis. So Daniel Day-Lewis has a bunch of different acting roles that he's done. There was the big one that he did for was it Gangs of New York, but the one I wanted to touch was On My Left Foot. So My Left Foot is one that he won an Oscar for, but he plays a painter with cerebral palsy that had to paint with his feet. So when you hear that, it's like, okay, what's Daniel Day-Lewis gonna do? Well, not only did he go and actually spend time in a cerebral palsy clinic, he then started living in a wheelchair. He had to be spoon fed by the crew member. So when he was there on set, he had to be carried. So he just kind of laid as they just carried him around. But he did that so much that it bruised and damaged his rib cage. So he started getting physical damage from it. But can you imagine just sitting there like, "Hey, Jose, you have an eye to be a cinematographer. Great, you got to start your feet off somewhere, kid. So we're gonna have you work on this shoot called My Left Foot." You're like, "Awesome." You're gonna spoon feed and wipe his ass. Daniel Day-Lewis, like, great. Everyone's got to start somewhere, Jose.
I'm not surprised. From what we've heard
From
about
him.
him, it's like not surprised.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I can see you see the dedication, but you can also see why it may be hard on set to work when an individual like that. So like the final product is gonna be worth it in the end,
Mm.
performance wise. But then like you have to evaluate as a co-star, as a cast member, you know, as everything like how much is your tolerance going to be to put up with that to get that end result? Because you know those shenanigans are gonna be there to the extreme.
Yeah, and he learned to paint and write with his toes. So the
You think he
feet,
still uses that skill?
probably.
Off in the hills of wherever he is now, yeah.
I know. That's how he writes his checks. If anybody says, so if he ever like sends it like an expensive check, it's like, I don't know if that's my signature. Just wrote it with your
Yeah,
toes.
See the toe
Yeah.
print in there. It's like, all right, this is legit.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Uh,
a little foot shavings inside the envelope for you.
yeah.
That's
Damn,
funny.
it's jammed in this envelope. No, that's toe jam, my friend.
See,
There
we were gonna have feet one way or another
Yeah.
on this episode.
you go, man. We just had to preface the listeners. That's
Uh,
it.
you know
All
what's
right,
crazy to
George.
me? It's like how
Mm.
early was that in his career too?
That one
Right?
was
Like that's real early
early.
on. So imagine also like the trust that everyone has to have in this guy who's still so new to the craft. It's not like when
Hmm.
he played Lincoln. At this point, he's
Hmm.
already got Oscars under his belt. So Spielberg is just like, oh my God, this is annoying. But you know what? You're proven, I'm proven. Go ahead, be crazy. We'll all call
Yeah.
you President Lincoln,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, you
Yeah.
know. But like at that time, it's like you don't got any awards under your belt. You haven't truly shown that you deserve to be like this. And to everyone just follow suit. It's like you had to have had an impressive freaking audition to just get that kind of pull on everybody. God
Oh,
damn.
that's
And if he wouldn't have, if the end result when that came out good, or the movie when that had been
hmm
received well and stuff, you know, as big as Hollywood is, it's very small when it comes to
Yep.
communication amongst each other. So
hmm
then it would have been like, oh, yeah, I don't know, before you work with him, know he's very difficult and the end
Yeah,
result doesn't justify the means.
Yeah.
that's true. I was gonna say that's a good point because imagine how many other actors we've had that have tried to come out and maybe have done something to this level, and the movie tanked. They weren't nearly as good of an actor as
Jared
they thought they
Leto.
were. Yes. And then you hear about that. So like I wonder what some of the craziest on-set method acting stories that are out there that maybe never even came to light where they didn't even get to as famous as Jared Leto. Like which ones didn't even get to that level? And it was just like a local city production of My Left Foot.
Well,
Just curious.
I mean, I guess we can say like thankfully he retired before someone gave him a serial killer role.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my
Could you imagine?
God.
You know, I mean, I don't know. He got kind of
Uh,
close with Gangs in New York.
Yeah, like
right.
weirdly enough, the body stopped appearing after the conclusion of this production.
I know.
All right. For my second one, I got Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx, as we know, won the Oscar for the movie Ray, where he plays, Ray Charles, famously known for being blind pianist, who is phenomenal behind the keys, pitch perfect voice. Jamie nailed it, obviously, with his singing performance and everything like that. It turns out that he actually had his eyes covered, like they were actually waxed shut during production. So he had like 16-hour days where he actually couldn't see whatsoever, and he had to be, kind of led around by a helper and everything like that. Now imagine he has shades on this whole time.
Yeah.
He didn't have to have his eyes waxed shut, but he's actually having to perform with his co-stars blind. So he's not getting to actually see his co-stars' responses to him as he's doing his thing. As we know, we do when we're acting, getting your partner's response is something that you can work off of, and you might get more emotion and everything out of it because of what they're doing. But he doesn't get that. He's just like Ray. He has to go with what he hears and what he feels within the moment. So every time you have those scenes where he's actually touching someone, he's actually literally having to use that to understand what Ray was going through. And I thought that was crazy. Like I've seen plenty of other movies where it's promised to be blind. They don't do that.
Mhm.
All right. They have the shades on, they close their eyes or whatever, or they look off to somewhere else,
Mhm.
you know. So that was interesting that he actually went that far to really understand what it was like to not see anything.
I think that's cool. And then unlike the one we heard from Diana Day-Lewis, it's less intrusive way of
Mhm.
method acting because it's not affecting anyone else but himself.
And the
Mhm.
Even
guider
though
and the person who guides him, but that's like that's
yeah,
minimal. That's so minimal.
it exactly. So that's a version of method acting where it isn't destructive to other people and or to what other people are doing. And I can see how that can be also be very effective within the scene itself. Because yes, you can't see people's facial expression or that stuff, but when it comes to your physical orientation to different people talking, it's going to be a natural reaction to now you're hearing the voice coming from over here, so you're not pretending to be like I can't see you. It's like okay, voice is over here, so you naturally are going to shift over there. So it gives that element to it that I think strengthens up a scene.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the good thing about him too is that he was always a really good singer. Even when he was in A Living Color, when you do some skits where you kind of hear him singing a little bit, you could tell, you can hear it like, man, that guy could really sing. And then when you would hear him coming out with some music, and of course, popped up on a couple of Kanye West songs, he could sing. So taking that element to him coming to this level, the good thing about Jamie Foxx is that I think he's a phenomenal talent. I think he's really good. This movie, I think, helped further prove that as well. I loved Ray Charles, the singer, the musician. And then when you see the movie, I was like, man, I didn't realize, though, at least the way they depicted him, I didn't realize he was such an a-hole. I
Yeah,
didn't think
yeah.
that. I don't know if you guys saw the movie,
I
but
watched it, yeah.
yeah, they kind of depict him that way. And I'm sure they pulled it from some parts of truth or whatnot, but he did a really good job with it. So if that's what it took for him to get there, great. And like what you guys said, it wasn't so intrusive on others. I guess I have a question for you guys. With all the stories that we hear, why do you feel like it's more male actors that we're hearing that are more of these method actors that are doing these more invasive kind of tactics or techniques? You don't typically hear female actresses that go through this extent. That is in no ways demeaning female actresses. I mean, by all means, like female actresses are amazing. I don't really hear female actresses having these kind of stories.
Just a theory of why you don't hear it too much is, and they're probably less likely to try to stir the boat than their
Mm-hmm.
male counterparts due
Mm,
to the availability of opportunities.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta think that they're already fighting for the spotlight in general.
Yeah.
You know, there's already that fight of like, oh, we're not getting enough compared to
Mm-hmm.
our male counterparts. So there could be that feeling of like, oh, if I try to be, like, you hear about the ones who wear divas. You get diva
Mm-hmm.
actresses, you know,
Yeah.
and
Especially
just
singers.
being hard to work with. It's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
then let's get another pretty face. I think
Yeah.
that's like the Hollywood mentality. It's like you're a pretty face, we can get another pretty face, no matter how great of an actress, no matter if you're a Julia Roberts or a Charlize Theron or
Mm,
whatever, Nicole Kidman. It's like you're great, but you're replaceable is almost like the attitude.
mm-hmm.
And there's almost like this sense of like, well, the male actors are bringing in the money. They're the ones who are going to get people in those seats. If you're not a Tom Cruise or back in the day in the 80s like a Schwarzenegger, Stallone,
Mm-hmm.
then it's whatever, you know.
That's true. And I wonder if it's I'm sure some parts of it is like the ego of man, right? We always feel we're a little more
Yeah.
grander to some extent, and women tend to be a little more in touch with other people's feelings, I guess. But no, it's just interesting. Just kind of think of that as we're going through these stories. It always tends to be people like that, like a Jared Leto, who will then kind of push the limits on stuff. But you never hear like a Meryl Streep doing any of that. And she's brought in some killer performances, and she doesn't have to go to that extent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like with method acting is very interesting because you have some ones like Marlon Brando, you can see the difference that it makes. And then it feels like you have ones like Jared Leto, who just seems to do things unnecessarily sometimes, where you're not necessarily seeing that translate to the great acting performance. And it seems like some kind of just hang on to acting absurd and weird and out there for the sake of almost getting that as a reputation, even though it doesn't really elevate your performance in any way.
Yeah. So like Jared Leto on the set, sending, dead rats and stuff to people and all these weird things. I don't see how that translates to him on screen. And judging by the fact that they cut out so much of him, it probably didn't translate much to the screen. That's a huge difference than what like Jamie Foxx is doing, which actually becomes part of his performance. Well, my next one is actually another male. This is actually the story that inspired this topic because I was like, wow, like this guy, I already thought this guy was underrated, and then this just brought it to another level. And that is James McAvoy. And this is for the movie. I don't know if you guys have heard of the movie My Son from James McAvoy.
Mm-mm.
This filmed around like the
Mm.
pandemic and all that stuff. I think it came out maybe in like 21, 22.
Mhm.
Uh, but James McAvoy pretty much improvised this entire movie, but it was set up like that on purpose. Uh, Everyone else got scripts and knew what the story was going to be. He did not. All he got was a page that gave background on his character, name, what his relationship with his parents are, what his relationship with his ex-spouse is, what his career is, just that basic background stuff. That's all he was given. No idea of what the story was, what the genre was, like nothing. He didn't know anything about the story. While everyone around him else knew it. He was given that, and then what he would be told. And he also um, he got isolated from the cast and the crew. He would just be given coordinates and he would show up and they would start filming and he would learn the story and what is happening as he was acting in the scene,
Mm.
playing off of what everyone else was saying. All he knew is that his son is missing and he's just kind of solving this mystery along with the audience, all him also not knowing what the hell was happening. So like that was like really cool. He was talking about like the first time he got the coordinates to go. So he goes to a coordinates, he's following the GPS to get there. Turns out he can't get there without getting on a ferry. So he gets to the ferry. He's like, do I drive my car into the ferry? Do I just go on the ferry? So then he drove his car into the ferry, and then there's the camera crew, and they started recording right away. He's like, I guess we're filming already. So he's just like, let's go along with it. And he started going through. There was a few times he said there was just minimal times where the director would be like, cut, and there'd be like, and he'd be like, so what just you just did it. It makes it impossible to progress through the story. Can you improv something else, but wouldn't tell them? And they'd be like, "All right, action. Let's go again." And he talked about one of the interesting parts about it. There was this one part where he's like going back and forth with another actor, and he was like, I feel like my character really wants to fight this guy right now. Like I really want to fight this guy, but he was like, he was going through this dilemma in his head while he's acting of, well, I also don't want to hurt him. Like, is he expecting that I'm going to attack him? Like, do I do it? Like, I also don't want to get into a grapple match because that looks terrible and all that stuff. So he was just like, you know what? I'm just going to aggressively swing and try to hold back at the last moment and then like slow down enough that he can get out of the way. The guy pivoted the wrong way. So he actually ended up hitting the guy, and then the guy like hit him back, and they actually got
Uh,
into the fight. And most of that got kept inside of the movie.
damn right.
But yeah, but I just thought this whole concept was insane. It was like basically like if you go to like those escape rooms and you're kind of living out a scenario. It was like that to the extreme, where he's living out a whole movie and actually solving a mystery.
The only thing I could think of like where it can go wrong is what if he figures it out really quickly? So like he's there in the movie, it's like, oh, they just give away the ending. Like he's able to figure out whatever happened to his son. But I think it's such a fascinating way. Did they market that movie? I guess they didn't market that movie that way at all. But had you told me about that, now I'm inspired to go watch the movie because
Right?
I want to see how
Yeah.
this plays out.
Definitely. Like I found out about this, but I was like, let me not watch it yet. I want to do the episode first. But I'm
Mm,
gonna watch it. Like
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just curious now that I know. Like now I'm gonna be watching them. Like this is making all this up in
Yeah.
his head and stuff. And the other actors, they have a script and they have certain lines that they have to say to kind of gear
Mm,
the story in the
mm,
right direction. But they're having to react to however he reacts, and he's reacting how he feels his character would
yeah.
Yeah.
react.
So they got to improv a lot too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And just
yeah,
hoping, waiting for the moment, like trying to fish out the right line out of him so that he can
Man,
say
that's
their
so
line.
hard. That's so hard, huh, when you think
Yeah.
about that, because it's like you're almost kind of
yeah,
waiting and you're waiting for it to feel organic. And at what points is it just not coming up? So you have to almost force it in there, but then it completely changes the trajectory of the scene. Like, that's
Yeah.
and
Like there's
fascinating.
a whole psychological way of like as an
Hmm.
actor, you know how to think totally different because now you're being manipulative in some facet
Yeah.
towards
Yeah.
this one guy who doesn't know which direction he's supposed to go in.
Yeah.
yeah. And he was saying that the director let him go unless it was an action that was going to completely break the scene where they can't progress to the other one. He was just kind of letting them go. He said that there was barely anything reshot. The only time they would reshoot things, it was things that did not influence the story. So like him driving up to a place. They'll be like, okay, well, let's redo that again. Drive up to a place
Hmm.
or walking into a place, not things as actual like interactions with other people.
Hmm. So it
Mm.
seems like it's more the blocking, and that's more because
Yeah.
of the
Right.
focus point, right, for your
Yeah.
cinematographer. So I bet you even in the scenes they probably gave them like they probably gave him markers where he had to stay within to make it
Mm.
easier for
I was
no?
saying no.
He,
I was
Damn, that
like,
he
cinematographer,
yeah,
man.
damn.
he said he had to use like all the skills he's learned through acting. So when he would walk into the room, he would have to look where are the cameras and then figure out, okay, where do I have to be to not be in the blind side of the camera and stay within the camera. I know I can't go to that corner because the cameras are not looking over there. And then I know I can't go over here because then that will show the other camera in the way. So he would
Oh my
have
God.
to block it in his head while also acting in the scene.
Okay, see, that seems
That's crazy.
hard because
Yeah.
now you have to, for a second, get out of character because now you're essentially working like a director where
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
figuring your blocking and stuff, and then you go into
Yeah.
character mode. It's like, Jesus.
That's why I
Uh,
want to see the end result.
right.
Yes, I need to see this
I
movie.
want to know
Like
the
that.
budget to this freaking movie because you gotta have also
Yeah.
enough money where you're not afraid to go over,
Hmm.
because this could be really expensive if they had to do, let's say, multiple takes or whatever, depending on
It
on
could
how
be.
things go out. you
But
know?
but
Let's
but the
see.
fact that it's 2021, I mean, they're probably using digital, so they're not filming, they're not shooting on
It's not
film.
film, no, but just time is
But
still money
it's
regardless,
time. Exactly. It's time, and you're losing
because
daylight.
yeah, exactly. Daylight, you got to pay these people that are working here, whether it's your crew, your actors, you know. That's damn, that's quite an experiment.
Yeah,
That's
that's
cool.
what I was gonna say. And it seems like psychological thriller, like that would be the next evolution of where you can take this kind of thing because
Yeah.
somebody that's feeling paranoid and feeling crazy, even feeling somewhat schizophrenic, it would make sense because you can read on your face because you don't know what the hell's going on. Do you remember how they had that show, Jose, that we used to watch? What was it on? Was it on Netflix? I think it was, but it was like a comedy. It was like a detective one, remember? And it had Will Arnett.
Oh,
Oh well, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
what was I forgot the name of that
Oh,
one, but
damn, yeah.
it was hilarious though. But you see
That's
the
not that
actors.
old. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Jason Bateman in it. I was just cracking up because there's just like you see comedians just trying to go along with it. It seems
Marshawn
like,
Lynch.
yeah, oh my God, man, that was funny. But yeah, that stuff was great.
Yeah. See, what I thought of immediately was like the Reno 911. That
Mm.
whole show was improv.
Hmm.
And then when they did
Curb Your
the movie
Enthusiasm
was all
was like,
improv. They had, like you
yeah,
said, they had notes. It's like, all right, no,
hmm
we know we have to get from point A to point B. How we get there, we'll all figure it out together.
yeah,
But this
yeah.
is more interesting having only one actor be out of the
And
loop.
James McAvoy,
And
and
Yeah.
not
James
even
McAvoy,
have an outline. You're
yeah,
literally
Yeah.
figuring it out as you go. You don't know where this scene is going. Everyone else around you does.
yeah, exactly.
Man, we gotta do
So
an episode on that thing now. I feel like
yeah,
that'd be interesting.
yeah, it would be. Yeah, no.
Yeah, we should watch it and do one.
Speaking of transformation, so when you thought of this, the first one I thought of was Christian Bale in the Machinist. So this one
Mhm.
was one of the most biggest physical transformations I saw. The dude lost like 60 pounds in just a couple months, and like his diet was insane. But the movie is called The Machinist. He plays a factory worker that can't sleep. Like it took him like he hasn't slept in like over a year. He's having like mental issues. He's starting to bleed between what's real and what's not. We find out later in the movie that it's immense amount of guilt that's sort of causing him to get to this level. So you see him starting becoming almost very paranoid, but like schizophrenic almost.
It's like
But
haunted by a figure.
exactly, he's haunted by a figure. So the crazy thing with this though, with Christian Bale doing this, is Christian Bale is another kind of method actor that we know of, and he's insane when he goes to these transformations. So if you look at pictures of him, as you'll see here, he's crazy, thin, insane, and
Yeah,
he
that's
was
like for 14 cents a day, you can
Yeah,
sponsor
exactly,
like 10
yeah.
yes,
stars.
exactly. He was on that level.
Yeah,
His
I think he
diet,
was on the coffee and cigarettes for that movie, right?
yes,
It was
no, drinking whiskey. He was just drinking whiskey. He was chain smoking, and they said he was basically just eating one can of tuna, an apple, and then just coffee a day. So it's just like less than 200 calories per day. That's all that he ate. And what's fascinating about this is that right after he did that, like maybe 2 months in, all of a sudden he's filming Batman Begins, and he bulks up to that level for Batman Begins. His body went through such a crazy transformation that like even when he went to the doctors about it, they had to warn him like, man, this thing could kill you. Like you can't do that. This is really like it's not healthy at all going through something like this. So, man, Christian Bale put his way to that limit, man. But even the movie itself, The Machine, is just crazy insane. That's such
yeah.
a good movie.
I remember hearing this before, but I think actually The Machinist was after Batman Begins, which it makes it crazier because I think he did Batman Begins, which he was bulked. Then he lost all that to do The Machinist. Then he rebulked to do The Dark Knight.
See,
Yeah, I think
that's what
that's
I
right. I
thought
think you're
when
right.
I
Yeah.
read this told me something different on the article that I read, but I thought what you said is what I thought it was squeezed right in between that.
Yeah,
But
that's
the
how I
art,
had read it, which makes
yeah,
it crazier. It was like
yes,
right in
the article
between.
said something
Yeah.
else, but let's go with what you're saying because that's what I
Yeah.
heard as well. But that was crazy, and even for the Dark Knight, he was more ripped in that one than he was in Batman Begins. Like that scene where you see him in his in his bedroom. Remember, and he gets up, he's got that big old bad bruising when he's talking to Alfred. He starts doing
He just
push-ups.
falls down and starts doing push-ups.
Yeah, and he starts falling down. He was
Yeah.
ripped and yoked for that movie, man. So to see him go through a transformation like this, like you gain that much weight and muscle just to drop it and to go right back up again, like that's crazy influx. That's crazy fluctuation for your body.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he does that
that's
for
gotta
all of
be.
his roles too. Every role he
Yeah.
does, he's always going up and down for his weight. Like he's never going to wear a fat suit, which I think is crazy.
Yeah, because they had what was it, American Hustlers, right? Or the
American
American
Hustle and
American
in Jane
Hustle.
the Cheney movie.
Yes. Crazy.
Yeah. Well,
Crazy.
It's insane because even like going from the machinist over to the Dark Knight, it's like you're not just like gaining weight. So like I'm sure in the condition that he was in, besides, you know, being malnutrition and everything, exercise is almost impossible at that point because I doubt he has the energy to do it. So he had to first try to gain some weight, get some energy, something, some fat for his body to pull from. Then he had to put on the muscle after that and begin like exercising. Like that can't be good long term for the body. Like I appreciate it artistically for the dedication. You know, we've seen like Tom Cruise, I mean not Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks do it for like
Yeah.
Castaway and he went like really, really thin. And all that stuff. But like physically the long-term effects of that up and down, like that can't be good at all, especially what you have to do to get there. I know we mentioned Jared Leto before, but he had a role too where he had to gain weight and he did it and he got fat and all he was doing was melting pints of Ben and Jerry's and drinking them like right out of the canister
Is
to
that
get that
bad
like
for you? Okay, not to sell. Stop doing that.
so like the metals themselves are like not like good
Mm.
for you. So but I mean the end
Okay.
result worked.
Yeah.
So this goes with remember 50 Cent had that movie where he had cancer,
Oh
I think it
yeah.
was. So he went to the same type of diet. And I remember seeing pictures of him where it looked all sickly, but then the movie was terrible. So then
Yeah.
it's like it goes with what we say, where sometimes maybe it's not necessarily the actor, maybe it's just the movie itself. You see people go to some big extremes and then just it's just not worth it at all. Like
But at the
Jared
same
Leto's a good
time,
example.
then you have people who don't go to the extremes. Like me and Jose just talked about the Penguin this past week,
Hmm.
and you have someone like Colin Farrell, amazing actor, phenomenal actor,
Hmm.
and it's like, I'm not gonna get fat. Put the suit on me.
Yes. See, and I think that's where I
I'll
go with.
sell the shit out of the suit.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and that's what I say is Colin Farrell's just a phenomenal actor, but I don't think the weight gain is necessary.
Yeah.
Now, Christian Bale getting yoked for Batman, yes, because you can't really put on a muscle suit, right? That's not going to look right. It's not going to look real, even when you do movements and fighting, because it's going to look more obvious. You getting fat for a role, I don't think improves your performance at all. It just means you don't need to wear a fat suit. Like I
And
don't, just to your guys' points,
yeah.
I don't think it improved at all Christian Bale's performance necessarily getting fat.
Yeah. The only thing I see from it where it can possibly enhance a performance is more of personal acting style. So, you know,
Hmm.
maybe with Christian Bale, he has to physically himself become that person in
Yeah.
order for his performance to be enhanced and become that person. While you
Hmm.
have someone like maybe Colin Farrell, who psychologically can become that person, that's enough for him, where he doesn't actually have to
Hmm.
feel like the person. Christian Bale seems like he's that person where he has to physically embody
Yeah.
a person. And then we have Daniel Day-Lewis, where his life has to embody person,
Hmm.
not just the
Yeah.
physical and the psychological.
Have you guys ever in your life or in your acting performances, have you guys ever had to do anything method at all? Like what was the furthest you've ever had to go to kind of tap into something outside of research?
I, I,
I
I
don't think
mean,
it's ever that bad.
Yeah, so I'm just
no,
curious.
I would just change
Even if
my
it's
voice.
small,
My
even if
voice is
it's
the most I
small,
would go. That's it.
that's it.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never gone like full method. There was a performance for a one act that I did in college. I did do a little bit of isolation, you know, listening to a lot of like, you know, depressing and angry
Hmm.
music, and then just kind of thinking, like only focusing on like bad memories for like a while leading up to the performance to just get myself into like that down like mindset aspect. That's probably the furthest that I've gone.
See, for me, when it comes to writing, I have to match my mood with what genre and what it is that I'm doing. So if I'm doing something if I'm writing like a horror, I surround myself with horror music. I start to watch a lot of horror movies and I kind of get into that mindset. If it's something that's comedy, I start going more that way. And to some extent, it's kind of starts to affecting my mood a little bit. But like that's about as method as I go when it comes to writing. But I mean, obviously, it's nothing like to this kind of level with stuff, but I'm just was curious.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
think method was not a style that I ever felt worked for me. Because with a method to it, it's also hard to find an off switch,
That's what it
and
is. It's
that can
hard.
be psychologically difficult and take a toll on
Hmm.
yourself if you can't turn
Yeah.
it off. And
Brain
so
doesn't
that's
know the
what
difference, right? Your brain doesn't know the difference.
Over time, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
We know the way our brains work themselves. Like our brains does miraculous things for us. Our brains ourselves, just on thought alone, we can make ourselves sick. We can create pain that isn't really there. You know, we can replicate symptoms of diseases if we think too hard on it. That's the power of our brain. So if you put yourself in situations where you're becoming someone else and you can't turn it off, you know, that can take a toll on you. And we've you know, heard stories like, you know, Heath Ledger, who tended to be method. And, you know, people have said that that took a toll on him where, you know, he had to turn to, you know, to prescriptions and things like that to try to alleviate some of the stuff that he was going through.
Thank you for watching another episode of Not a Strong Start. You can watch us on YouTube. Please subscribe, comment, share on our YouTube channel, Not a Strong Start. You can listen to us anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, Not a Strong Start. I'm your host, Dan's Feet. You can follow me at King_Sangre.
I am not your host, just incredible. And you can find me at This Is Me Nombre on Instagram.
And I'm your other guy, kicking it up a notch. And you can follow me at Nicolopolis.
It's got to add the chuckle in there. Picking it up. And then just incredible.